Circleville, Ohio, seemed like a typical small American town. Quiet, with neighbors who had known each other for generations and a strong sense of community woven into everyday life. But in 1976, that peace was shattered by something no one could have anticipated. Anonymous letters began appearing in residents' mailboxes. Handwritten in a cold and threatening tone, the messages revealed personal secrets and made disturbing accusations. For Mary Gillespie, a school bus driver, these letters were just the beginning of a nightmare that would transform her life and turn the entire town into a stage for paranoia. The first letter Mary received was direct and chilling. The anonymous writer accused her of having an affair with Gordon Massey, the local school superintendent. The message read, "I've been watching your house and I know you have children. Stay away from Massey." Mary tried to dismiss the warning, but the letters kept coming, each one more aggressive and detailed about her personal life. Fear began to spread through the town as it became clear that Mary wasn't the only target. Other residents started receiving similar messages, creating an atmosphere of distrust among neighbors. Mary's husband, Ron Gillespie, soon found himself caught in the web of threats. He began receiving letters urging him to confront his wife and Gordon Massey about the alleged affair. The messages were relentless, pushing Ron into a state of agitation and suspicion. Then, in August 1977, everything escalated. Ron received a mysterious phone call that he believed was from the letter writer. Fueled by anger and determination, he grabbed his gun and stormed out of the house to confront whoever was behind the harassment. Hours later, Ron was found dead in his car after crashing into a tree. Authorities ruled his death an accident caused by drunk driving, but his family contested this explanation, claiming Ron wasn't a heavy drinker. The circumstances surrounding his death only deepened the mystery. Despite Ron's tragic death, the letters didn't stop. They multiplied. Mary became the primary target once again, but this time the threats extended beyond her mailbox. Signs with offensive messages about her began appearing along her bus route, taunting her daily as she drove children to school. In 1983, one of these signs led to a shocking discovery. While attempting to remove it, Mary found a booby trap rigged with a loaded gun designed to fire when tampered with. Authorities traced the weapon back to Paul Freshour, Mary's brother-in-law. He was arrested and later convicted for attempted murder. But even with Paul behind bars, the letters continued to arrive. Some even sent directly to him in prison. Paul Freshour's conviction brought no closure to the people of Circleville. If anything, it only raised more questions. How could the letters continue if the supposed culprit was locked away? Some residents began to suspect that Paul wasn't acting alone, or worse, that he had been framed. Paul himself maintained his innocence until his dying day, claiming he had no involvement in the letters or the booby trap. His conviction, however, didn't stop the whispers of conspiracy. Some believed that members of Paul's own family might have orchestrated the letters to settle personal grudges or to shift suspicion away from themselves. The case grew even stranger in 1993 when a convicted murderer named Thomas Lee Dillon claimed responsibility for the Circleville Letters. Dillon's confession seemed credible at first. His writing style bore similarities to the threatening notes, and he had a history of taunting his victims. But investigators could never definitively link him to the case. Meanwhile, forensic analysis of Paul Freshour's handwriting suggested a match with some of the letters, though experts admitted that such tests weren't foolproof. These conflicting theories only added layers to an already tangled mystery, leaving Circleville residents divided over who they could trust. The psychological toll on Circleville was profound. The letters had turned neighbors into suspects, friends into enemies, and the town into a cauldron of suspicion. People began watching each other more closely, wondering who might be behind the anonymous threats. For Mary Gillespie, the ordeal was deeply personal. She lived in constant fear, not only for herself, but for her children, who were also indirectly targeted by the writer's ominous warnings. Every time a new letter arrived or a sign appeared along her route, it felt like a fresh wound, a reminder that someone out there knew her every move. By the time the letters finally stopped in 1994, shortly after Paul Freshour's release from prison, the damage had already been done. Circleville would never return to the peaceful community it once was. The mystery of who wrote the letters remained unsolved, and for many residents, the lack of closure was its own form of torment. Even decades later, the events still lingered in local memory, whispered about in hushed tones as a cautionary tale of how one anonymous figure could unravel an entire town with nothing more than ink and paper. The Circleville Letters gained national attention over the years, becoming a subject of fascination for true crime enthusiasts and investigators alike. The case was featured on programs like Unsolved Mysteries, which brought renewed interest but no definitive answers. Theories ranged from the plausible to the bizarre. Some speculated that the writer was a disgruntled resident with deep knowledge of the town's secrets, while others believed it could have been a coordinated effort by multiple people. The idea of a larger conspiracy, possibly involving local authorities or even Mary's extended family, continued to fuel speculation. Forensic experts revisited the case several times, hoping advances in technology might shed light on the mystery. Handwriting analysis, DNA testing, and psychological profiling were all explored, but none provided conclusive evidence. The anonymity of the letters remained intact, as did their chilling legacy. To this day, Circleville residents still wonder if the writer was someone they knew, a neighbor, a colleague, or even a friend. The unanswered question of why looms large, casting a shadow over the town's history and leaving an unsettling reminder that some mysteries are destined to remain unsolved. What made the Circleville Letters so terrifying wasn't just their content, but the sheer persistence of the sender. Over nearly 2 decades, hundreds of letters were sent, each one meticulously crafted to strike fear and sow discord. The writer's ability to expose personal secrets suggested an intimate knowledge of the town's residents, which only deepened the paranoia. People began questioning how much of their lives was truly private. Was the writer someone who lived among them, attending church services and community events, all while orchestrating this campaign of terror? Even more unsettling was the fact that the letters weren't confined to Mary Gillespie or her family. Business owners, local officials, and other residents received similar threats, though not all of them were made public. Some letters hinted at corruption within the local government, while others targeted individuals for reasons that remain unclear. The randomness of the attacks made it impossible to predict who might be next, leaving the entire town on edge. It wasn't just a mystery. It was a psychological game that no one could escape. For Mary, the scars left by the letters weren't just emotional, they were deeply personal. The accusations about her affair with Gordon Massey had spread like wildfire, whether they were true or not. Gossip consumed the town, and Mary found herself at the center of a storm she couldn't control. The writer seemed to take pleasure in dismantling her reputation piece by piece, and the constant scrutiny from her neighbors only added to her torment. Even years after the letters stopped, Mary struggled to rebuild her life, knowing that some people would always view her through the lens of those anonymous accusations. Paul Freshour's involvement in the case remains one of its most debated aspects. While his conviction for the booby trap seemed to tie him to the letters, many questioned whether he was truly the mastermind or just a scapegoat. Paul's defenders argued that the evidence against him was circumstantial at best, and that his trial had been influenced by public pressure to find someone, anyone, responsible. Yet others pointed to his strained relationship with Mary and suggested he had a personal motive for targeting her. The truth, like so much else in this case, remains elusive. The Circleville Letters also exposed the fragility of trust within a close-knit community. Circleville had always prided itself on its neighborly bonds, but the letters shattered that illusion. People began to suspect one another, questioning even lifelong friendships. The idea that the writer could be someone they saw every day, a co-worker, a fellow churchgoer, or even a relative, was a thought too disturbing to ignore. In a town where everyone knew everyone, the anonymity of the letters felt like both a betrayal and a cruel joke. As time went on, the story of the Circleville Letters became less about solving the mystery and more about understanding its impact. The fear it instilled lingered long after the letters stopped arriving. For some residents, it was easier to believe that the writer had moved away or passed on than to confront the possibility that they still lived among them. Others refused to let go of their suspicions, convinced that the truth was just out of reach. The case became a ghost-haunting Circleville, a reminder of how quickly trust can dissolve when fear takes hold. The psychological profile of the Circleville letter writer has been the subject of much speculation. Experts have suggested that the individual was likely someone with a deep-seated need for control and manipulation. The letters weren't just random threats, they were calculated, designed to provoke fear and chaos while maintaining the writer's anonymity. This level of precision suggested intelligence, but also a disturbing lack of empathy. Whoever penned those letters seemed to thrive on the power they held over the town, watching as their words unraveled relationships and shattered lives. Despite numerous theories, no one has ever been able to definitively answer the most haunting question: why? What drove someone to terrorize an entire community for nearly 2 decades? Was it revenge, jealousy, or simply a twisted desire for attention? The lack of motive is perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the case. Without understanding the why, Circleville residents were left grappling with a mystery that felt both deeply personal and maddeningly abstract, a puzzle with too many missing pieces. One of the most chilling aspects of the Circleville letters was their ability to expose secrets that many believed were buried. The writer's knowledge of intimate details about Mary Gillespie and other residents suggested they had access to information that wasn't publicly available. This raised unsettling questions. Was the writer someone with ties to law enforcement or local government? Or were they simply an observant neighbor who had spent years quietly gathering details about the lives of those around them? The idea that someone could know so much and use it so maliciously left the town feeling vulnerable and exposed. Even decades later, the Circleville letters continue to captivate true crime enthusiasts, not just for their mystery, but for their psychological complexity. The case isn't just about identifying the sender. It's about understanding how one person, or perhaps several, could manipulate an entire community using fear as their weapon. The letters were more than threats. They were a mirror, reflecting the town's darkest fears and insecurities. Circleville became a case study in how paranoia can spread like wildfire, consuming everything in its path and leaving scars that never fully heal. For those closest to the case, like Mary Gillespie, the letters were more than just a public spectacle. They were a private torment. Mary's life was dissected and displayed for all to judge, and the accusations against her left a permanent stain on her reputation. Even if she tried to move forward, the whispers and side glances from neighbors served as constant reminders of the ordeal. It wasn't just about the letters anymore. It was about the legacy they had left behind. Her family, too, bore the weight of the writer's words, living under a shadow of suspicion and fear that never truly lifted. The death of Ron Gillespie added another layer of tragedy to the story. While officially ruled an accident, many believed there was more to the incident than met the eye. The mysterious phone call that prompted Ron to leave his house that night has never been explained. Was it truly from the letter writer? And if so, what did they say that drove him to such a desperate act? The lack of answers surrounding his death only deepened the sense of injustice felt by his family and fueled speculation that the writer's campaign of terror had far-reaching consequences. The case of the Circleville letters also highlighted the limitations of law enforcement in dealing with such an unusual form of harassment. Despite years of investigation, authorities were unable to definitively identify the sender or put an end to the letters. The booby trap incident seemed like a breakthrough, leading to Paul Freshour's conviction, but even that failed to stop the letters from arriving. For many residents, this inability to solve the case was a bitter pill to swallow. It wasn't just about catching the culprit. It was about restoring a sense of safety and trust that had been stolen from their community. As time passed, Circleville tried to move on, but the memory of the letters lingered. The town became synonymous with the mystery, drawing attention from journalists, investigators, and curious outsiders who wanted to uncover the truth. For some residents, this attention was unwelcome, a reminder of a painful chapter they wished to forget. But for others, it was a chance to keep the story alive, in hopes that someday someone might finally solve it. The Circleville Letters remain a testament to how one person's actions can ripple through an entire community, leaving scars that time struggles to heal. The Circleville Letters case has become a cautionary tale, not just for the residents of Ohio, but for anyone who believes their secrets are safe. It serves as a chilling reminder of how easily privacy can be violated and trust destroyed. The writer didn't need violence to wreak havoc. They relied solely on words, carefully chosen and strategically delivered. This made the case all the more unsettling. If someone could cause so much damage with just letters, what else might they be capable of? The psychological impact of the letters far outweighed any physical harm, leaving the town grappling with the invisible wounds of fear and suspicion. Even today, the mystery remains a topic of discussion among true crime enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists. Online forums and podcasts dissect every detail, from the handwriting analysis to the possible motives behind the letters. Some believe the writer is still alive, watching from a distance as their work continues to captivate and terrify. Others think the truth died with Paul Freshour or another suspect who was never formally identified. Regardless of who was behind it, one thing is certain. The Circleville Letters have left an indelible mark on American criminal history, reminding us that sometimes the most dangerous weapon is anonymity. For the families directly affected, the Circleville Letters were more than just a mystery. They were a source of lasting trauma. Mary Gillespie's children, for instance, grew up under the shadow of the letters, their lives shaped by the fear and scrutiny that surrounded their mother. The writer's threats weren't limited to adults. They extended to children, making it clear that no one was off limits. This cruelty added another layer of horror to the case, as parents in Circleville began to wonder if their own families might be next. The letters didn't just invade homes, they invaded minds, planting seeds of paranoia that would take years to fade. The lack of resolution in the case has left a void that even decades of speculation haven't been able to fill. Without answers, those who lived through the ordeal are left with only theories and suspicions. Was the writer someone close to Mary, a disgruntled neighbor, or perhaps someone entirely unexpected? The uncertainty is what makes the Circleville Letters so haunting. It's not just about what happened. It's about what could still be lurking beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. As the years passed, Circleville tried to reclaim its identity, but the letters had left an indelible stain. The once close-knit community now carried the weight of suspicion and fear, a legacy that couldn't be erased. For some residents, the mystery became a source of fascination, a story they could tell outsiders about their infamous town. But for others, it was a painful reminder of how vulnerable they had been to someone's malicious intent. The letters weren't just a crime, they were an invasion, a violation of the trust that held the town together. True crime investigators have often pointed out how unique the Circleville Letters case is. Unlike most criminal cases, there was no physical violence, no murders directly tied to the letters, no tangible evidence beyond the notes themselves. Yet the psychological damage was immense, arguably worse than any physical harm could have been. The writer's ability to Manipulate and control an entire town from behind a veil of anonymity is what makes this case so chilling. It wasn't just about Mary Gillespie or Paul Freshour. It was about how fear can spread like a virus. Infecting the Circleville Letters have become a symbol of unresolved mysteries and the power of anonymity. In the decades since the letters stopped, advancements in forensic science have solved countless cold cases, but this one remains untouched. Some experts believe that the writer was simply too careful, leaving behind no traceable evidence. Others argue that the case could still be solved if new leads or confessions emerged. But for Circleville residents, the lack of closure is a wound that never fully healed. It's not just about justice, it's about reclaiming the peace of mind that was stolen from them. For Mary Gillespie, the ordeal shaped her life in ways she could never have imagined. Even as she tried to move forward, the shadow of those letters lingered. Every glance from a neighbor, every whisper in town carried the weight of suspicion and judgment. The writer didn't just target her, they dismantled her sense of safety and belonging. And while Mary eventually found ways to cope, the scars remained, a constant reminder of how one person's cruelty could ripple through an entire community. The Circleville Letters also serve as a reminder of how fragile the concept of community can be. What was once a town bound by trust and familiarity became a place where everyone was a potential suspect. The anonymity of the writer turned neighbors into enemies and friends into strangers. Circleville's story is not just about the letters, it's about the psychological toll of living under constant scrutiny. The fear didn't end when the letters stopped. It lingered, reshaping relationships and leaving residents questioning who they could truly trust. Even today, the case remains a source of speculation and debate. Some believe the writer was someone long dead, their secrets buried with them. Others think the truth is still out there, waiting to be uncovered by a new generation of investigators. The Circleville Letters have transcended their origins, becoming a legend in true crime history. They remind us that sometimes the most unsettling mysteries are not those solved by forensic evidence, but those that live on in whispers and unanswered questions. For those who study the case, the Circleville Letters are a masterclass in psychological warfare. The writer didn't need to be physically present to control the town. Their words alone were enough to instill fear and chaos. The precision of the letters, targeting specific individuals with deeply personal information, suggested an intimate knowledge of the community. This level of insight has led many to believe that the writer was someone who lived among them, blending into daily life while orchestrating a campaign of terror from the shadows. The booby trap incident remains one of the most perplexing elements of the case. While Paul Freshour was convicted for setting it up, doubts about his guilt persist to this day. If Freshour wasn't the mastermind, then who was? And why did the letters continue even after his arrest? These unanswered questions have kept the case alive in public consciousness, fueling theories that range from plausible to far-fetched. Whether it was a single person or a group working together, the writer's ability to evade capture for so long is both impressive and deeply unsettling. The role of the media in the Circleville Letters case cannot be overlooked. As news of the letters spread beyond Ohio, the story took on a life of its own. True crime shows, newspaper articles, and even books dissected every detail, turning Circleville into an infamous symbol of small-town paranoia. For some residents, this attention was unwelcome, reopening old wounds and reigniting fears they had tried to bury. But for others, it was an opportunity to keep the mystery alive, hoping that fresh eyes might uncover new clues. The media transformed the case from a local scandal into a national enigma. Despite the passage of time, the Circleville Letters remain a chilling example of how words can wield immense power. The writer never needed to step out of the shadows to control the narrative. They let their letters do the work for them. This anonymity gave them an almost mythical status, turning them into a ghost haunting Circleville's collective memory. The case is A reminder that sometimes it's not the crimes we can see that terrify us most. It's the ones that leave no trace, no face, and no answers. One of the most unsettling aspects of the Circleville Letters is how they blurred the line between public and private life. The writer seemed to have an uncanny ability to uncover secrets that people thought were safe, exposing them in ways that felt both calculated and deeply personal. This invasion of privacy wasn't just about humiliation, it was about control. By revealing what should have remained hidden, the writer forced their victims into a state of vulnerability, making it clear that no part of their lives was truly off-limits. For many in Circleville, this was perhaps the most terrifying aspect of all. Even as new generations grow up in Circleville, the legacy of the letters lingers. The story has become part of the town's identity, a dark chapter that refuses to close. Some residents choose to avoid discussing it altogether, while others embrace it as a piece of local lore. But for those who lived through the ordeal, the memories remain vivid. The letters weren't just words on a page, they were a weapon, wielded with precision and malice. And while the writer may never be unmasked, their impact on Circleville is undeniable, a haunting reminder of how easily fear can take root and spread. The Circleville Letters also raise questions about the nature of justice and accountability. If the writer was never caught, does that mean they won? For the residents of Circleville, the lack of closure feels like a failure, not just of law enforcement, but of the community itself. How could someone operate in plain sight for so long without being discovered? This lingering sense of injustice has kept the case alive in public memory, a reminder that not all crimes come with tidy resolutions. The writer may have disappeared, but their actions left a mark that will never fully fade. In many ways, the Circleville Letters are a story about power. The writer didn't need wealth, influence, or physical force to control an entire town. They only needed anonymity and a pen. This dynamic is what makes the case so terrifying. It wasn't just about the letters themselves. It was about the fear they created and the way that fear spread like a contagion. Circleville became a microcosm of what happens when trust is eroded and suspicion takes its place. The writer may be gone, but their legacy lives on as a cautionary tale of how fragile our sense of security can be. As the years turned into decades, the Circleville Letters faded from the headlines, but they never truly left the minds of those who lived through them. For some, the mystery became an obsession, a puzzle they couldn't stop trying to solve. Amateur sleuths pored over old letters, dissecting every word for hidden clues. Others scoured public records, hoping to uncover a name or a motive that had been overlooked. Yet, despite all the effort, the identity of the writer remains as elusive as ever. The case stands as a stark reminder that not all questions have answers, and not all mysteries are meant to be solved. For Circleville itself, the letters are both a source of infamy and a painful reminder of what was lost. The town's reputation was forever changed, and its sense of safety shattered. What happened there could happen anywhere, a fact that continues to unsettle anyone who hears the story. The Circleville Letters are more than just an unsolved case. They're a symbol of how easily fear can infiltrate even the most ordinary places. And while the writer may never be unmasked, their actions serve as a chilling testament to the power of words and the damage they can inflict. The Circleville Letters case continues to intrigue and disturb, not because of what we know, but because of what we don't. The unanswered questions, who wrote the letters, why they did it, and how they knew so much, are what make this mystery so enduring. It's a story that refuses to fade, lingering in the collective consciousness as a chilling example of how one person's actions can ripple through an entire community. For some, the lack of resolution is maddening. For others, it's what makes the case so fascinating. After all, the unknown has a way of haunting us far more than the known ever could. As we look back on the Circleville Letters, it's impossible not to wonder about the writer's mindset. Were they driven by revenge, jealousy, or something darker? Did they ever feel remorse for the lives they disrupted and the fear they caused? Or did they take satisfaction in knowing they had created a legacy that would outlive them? These are questions we may never answer. But one thing is certain. The Circleville Letters are a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying mysteries aren't those solved by detectives or forensic experts. They're the ones that remain unsolved, lurking in the shadows of our imagination. For Mary Gillespie and her family, the Circleville Letters were more than just a mystery. They were a wound that never fully healed. The accusations, the threats, and the relentless scrutiny left scars that time couldn't erase. Mary carried the weight of those letters for the rest of her life, knowing that someone out there had taken pleasure in dismantling her sense of security. For her children, the ordeal was a reminder of how easily innocence can be shattered. The writer may have disappeared, but their impact on Mary's family was permanent, a shadow that loomed over every attempt to move forward. As Circleville tries to leave this dark chapter behind, the story of the letters remains a cautionary tale. It's a reminder of how fragile trust can be and how easily fear can spread when anonymity is weaponized. The case has become more than just an unsolved mystery. It's a reflection of human vulnerability and the power of manipulation. The Circleville Letters may never be solved, but their legacy endures as one of the most haunting examples of psychological terror in American history. And perhaps that's what makes them so unforgettable. They remind us that sometimes the greatest threats aren't the ones we can see. They're the ones we can't. The Circleville Letters have left an indelible mark not just on the town, but on the broader landscape of true crime lore. They serve as a stark reminder of how much damage a single person can inflict with nothing more than anonymity and determination. For decades, the case has baffled investigators, inspired countless theories, and haunted those who lived through it. The writer's identity remains a mystery, but their actions have cemented Circleville's place in history as a town forever changed by fear. It's a story that continues to captivate because it speaks to something deeply unsettling. The idea that anyone, anywhere, could be watching. As the years go by, the Circleville Letters remain an unsolved puzzle, a chilling testament to the power of the unknown. Case has inspired books, documentaries, and endless speculation, but no amount of analysis has brought us closer to the truth. Perhaps that's why it endures, because it forces us to confront our own fears about privacy, trust, and vulnerability. The Circleville Letters aren't just a story about one town's nightmare. They're a reflection of how fragile our sense of safety can be when faced with an enemy we cannot see or understand. In the end, the Circleville Letters remain a mystery that defies resolution. The writer's identity, motives, and methods are questions that may never be answered. But perhaps the most haunting aspect of the case is its simplicity. No grand conspiracy, no elaborate schemes, just letters written by someone who understood how to exploit fear and suspicion. It's a reminder that sometimes the most effective weapon isn't physical, it's psychological. Circleville may have moved on, but the scars left by those letters are a testament to how deeply words can cut. For those who hear the story today, the Circleville Letters are a chilling example of how one person's actions can ripple through an entire community. They remind us that even in the most ordinary places, extraordinary darkness can take hold. The case remains unsolved, but its impact is undeniable, a legacy of fear and uncertainty that continues to fascinate and disturb. As long as the mystery remains, the Circleville Letters will endure as one of the most unsettling chapters in true crime history, a story that leaves us questioning not just who did it, but what they were truly capable of.